They say some conversations change you, and I guess I never believed that until that morning. Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts or story in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. Now before I begin, tell me, where are you watching from? I'd love to know which cities and towns are joining me for this memory that stayed with me for years. It started like any other Monday. The sun hadn't fully made its way over the buildings yet, just casting that soft, yellow light through the windows of my apartment. I remember standing at the kitchen sink, still in my robe, sipping weak coffee, the kind you make when you're half asleep and not paying attention. The city outside hadn't woken up either, just the occasional hum of a distant truck, and the pigeons already holding their morning meetings on the fire escape. I was 47 at the time. I'd been working at the same company for almost 12 years. Marketing division. Gray carpeted hallways, the hum of computers, coffee that tastes like cardboard. And my boss, well, Robert wasn't exactly what you'd call a people person. He was a quiet man, not unfriendly, just measured. Always calm, always professional, like he kept a part of himself folded away where no one could reach it. That morning, he unfolded just enough for me to see something I didn't expect. I got to the office around 8:10, late by Robert's standards, early by everyone else. I remember the elevator doors opening and the lights still warming up in the hallway. I was fumbling with my keycard when I heard him call my name. "Marion," he said, his voice even, like always, but there was something else behind it that made me stop in my tracks. I turned. He was standing by the conference room, holding a file in one hand, the other resting casually on the doorframe. His tie was slightly askew, something I had never seen before, and his hair wasn't perfectly in place. Small things, but they unsettled me. I blinked. "Morning, Robert. Can I speak with you a minute?" he asked. I followed him into the room, still clutching my bag and my lukewarm coffee. He closed the door behind me, and suddenly the silence felt heavier than usual. The blinds were half closed, and the soft light filtered in, catching dust motes in the air. It was oddly peaceful, like being inside a snow globe right before someone shakes it. "I've been thinking," he began, setting the file down, "about some of the things you said in last week's meeting. Your ideas for the Anderson account." I nodded slowly. I had almost forgotten about that meeting. I'd pitched a direction that was a bit risky, not quite what we usually did. Honestly, I hadn't thought he liked it. "You challenged me," he said, not in a confrontational way, but in a way I couldn't shake off. That's when I noticed his eyes, really noticed them. They weren't cold or distant like usual. They looked tired, like he hadn't slept much. But there was something else, too, something that looked like admiration? No, maybe respect. It caught me off guard. "I've been stuck in one way of thinking for a long time," he continued. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe after the divorce, maybe before. But your words reminded me that it's okay to see things differently, that maybe I've been playing it too safe." I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, coffee still in hand, fingers tightening around the handle. I felt my heart thump once, a little louder than before. "I didn't mean to make you question yourself," I said quietly. "You didn't. You made me remember myself." And just like that, something shifted between us. It wasn't romantic, not in that moment. It was something quieter, something harder to name. Like two people accidentally opening a window that had been stuck shut for years and realizing the air smells better than they remembered. We stood in that room for a few more seconds, not speaking. The light moved across the table, and the city outside kept going, unaware that anything had changed. But for me, it had. Because after all these years of working side by side, I finally saw the man behind the title, and I think, just maybe, he saw me too. And that morning, his words didn't just stick with me, they stirred something awake. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had a moment like that. One conversation, one glance, one sentence that stayed with you longer than you expected. I'll tell you what happened next in the next part of this story. After that morning, I couldn't quite settle into my usual rhythm. You know how some moments echo louder after they're over? That was one of them. I kept hearing Robert's voice in my head. You made me remember myself. Not a typical thing your boss says over a folder and a lukewarm office meeting room. The rest of that day passed like I was walking underwater. I did the usual, responded to emails, made my way through campaign notes, sat through a client call where no one could agree on anything. But it all felt muted, like the volume had been turned down on everything else. I glanced at his office more times than I cared to admit. His door was mostly shut, blinds half drawn. But just before lunch, I caught a glimpse of him standing near the window, looking out with his arms folded like he was weighing something heavier than his schedule. We hadn't had a real personal conversation in over a decade of working together. We knew the basics. He liked early mornings, hated office birthday parties, and was always the last to leave. I was the reliable one, the one who remembered who was gluten-free in the department and kept pens stocked in the cabinet. The invisible backbone. But that morning, I felt seen. It was around 4:15 when I heard a soft knock on the divider near my desk. I turned, and there he was, Robert, with a strange, tentative look on his face. I was wondering, he said slowly, if he'd like to grab a coffee after work. No pressure. Just talk. Now, if he'd told me the day before that Robert Lane would invite me to coffee, outside the office, just to talk, I'd have laughed. But there he was, not polished, not practiced. Just a man who looked like he needed a moment of real connection. Sure, I said before I could think too much about it. I'd like that. We ended up at a little place 2 blocks from the office. It wasn't fancy, just one of those narrow shops with a few scratched tables and a chalkboard menu that hadn't changed in years. The kind of place where people go when they want quiet more than caffeine. We found a table by the window. Outside, the sidewalks were dotted with people rushing home, but in there, everything slowed down. I don't do this often, he admitted after we sat. Not since, well, for a while now. You don't have to explain, I replied. Sometimes life just narrows. He looked at me then, not like a boss, not like someone weighing what I could do for the next quarter, but like a person searching for someone who might understand the parts they usually keep hidden. My world got small, he said, his hands wrapped around the coffee cup. Work. Sleep. Repeat. I thought I was keeping things simple, safe. But lately, I don't know. It's like I woke up and realized I was standing still. There was a silence after that. Not awkward, just full. I nodded. It happens quietly, doesn't it? You think you're managing fine, and then one day you look around and wonder when everything got so quiet. He smiled, not broadly, but in that gentle way people do when they feel heard. We talked for nearly an hour. Not about campaigns or meetings, but about books we'd read, music we missed from our younger years, the strange comfort of routines, and the ache they sometimes leave behind. He told me about his divorce, not the details, just the feeling of watching something drift away despite your best efforts. I shared a little about my son moving across the country, and the stillness the apartment held afterward. When we walked out into the cool evening air, he turned to me and said, "Thanks, Marion." That felt real, and I didn't realize how much I missed that. And you know what? I felt the same. It wasn't about romance. It wasn't even about work. It was about 2 people, each quietly navigating the later chapters of their lives, finding, unexpectedly, that maybe they weren't as alone in it as they thought. Something had shifted. It wasn't big or loud, but it was true. That night, I walked home without my headphones in. I listened to the city, the rhythm of it, the voices, the ordinary beauty of people just living. And I thought about how sometimes, when you least expect it, someone says just enough to remind you that you're still very much alive. Have you ever had a moment like that, where a simple conversation stirred something awake in you? Let me know in the comments. I'll tell you what came next in the next part of the story. Stay with me. The following week brought a quiet kind of change. Not the dramatic, movie scene kind, just small shifts, like the way Robert started pausing at my desk a little longer in the morning, or how our emails to each other carried a lighter tone, a dash of humor tucked between the lines. I noticed things about him I'd never paid attention to before. The way he tapped his pen when deep in thought. How he smiled a little crooked when something surprised him. And how, when he listened, he really listened, not just waiting for his turn to speak. I wasn't falling for him, not exactly. But I was beginning to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Curiosity. And maybe that quiet pull that comes when someone makes space for you in a way you didn't realize you'd been craving. One Thursday afternoon, he stopped by my desk again. "You busy after 5?" he asked casually, but I could tell he'd been rehearsing it in his head. I glanced up from my screen. Not especially. "I've got 2 tickets to an offer talk at the library downtown. Thought of you. Figured it might be your kind of thing." That caught me off guard. Not just the invitation, but the fact that he remembered I liked books and had once mentioned that the library was one of my favorite places in the city. Most people forget things like that. He didn't. So we went. The talk was good, intimate, thoughtful. A writer I admired, speaking about memory and loss, and how words sometimes hold more than we expect them to. But what I remember most from that evening wasn't the speaker. It was how I felt sitting next to Robert in that quiet auditorium, both of us leaning in when a sentence landed deep, both of us nodding without saying much. Afterward, we walked through the plaza outside. The air had a chill in it, the kind that sneaks into your sleeves and makes you wish you'd brought your heavier coat. He asked if I wanted to get a bite to eat, and we ended up in a small diner, the kind with faded booths and a jukebox that hadn't worked since the 90s. I ordered soup. He got a sandwich. It was so ordinary, so comfortable, that I felt more at ease than I had in months. At one point, he looked across the table and said, "You know, I wasn't planning on asking you tonight. I had the tickets for a few days. I kept thinking maybe I'd just go alone." I stirred my soup slowly, watching the steam rise. "So why didn't you?" I asked. "Because I kept hearing your voice in my head. That thing you said a few weeks ago, about how life narrows quietly. I didn't want that to be true anymore. Not if I could help it." There was a moment of silence after that, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that said everything without needing to fill it. "I get it," I said softly. I didn't realize how small my life had gotten either, until we started talking. He nodded, his hand resting on the edge of the table, fingers curling in a way that looked thoughtful, not nervous, just present. We didn't make promises that night. There was no big declaration, no sweeping gesture. Just the simple, steady recognition of something new beginning to form between us. Something honest. When he dropped me off, he didn't walk me to the door. He just waited until I turned back, gave him a small wave, and went inside. It was enough. More than enough. That night, as I sat by the window in my apartment, watching the lights flicker across the street, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Hope. Not for anything specific, not for some fairy tale. Just hope in the quiet possibility that even in the middle of a life you think you already understand, something unexpected can still bloom. Let me know in the comments if you've ever found connection in the most ordinary of moments, because sometimes those are the ones that stay with us the longest. I'll tell you what happened after that in the final part of the story. You won't want to miss it. It's funny how the most meaningful shifts in our lives don't come from the loud moments, but the quiet ones, the pauses between meetings, the unexpected invitations, the words you didn't expect to hear, spoken softly but with weight. After that evening at the library and the diner, Robert and I didn't label anything. There were no dramatic changes in the office, no whispers or knowing glances. We just kept talking, kept meeting, kept showing up for each other in small, consistent ways. Every Thursday, without planning it, we found each other after work. Sometimes it was for a quick cup of coffee. Other times, a quiet walk through the park as the sun dipped low behind the trees. We talked about everything and nothing. Our childhoods, the books that stayed with us, the odd beauty of growing older and realizing how much life still has left to give. One evening, as fall began to settle in for good, we found ourselves on a park bench watching the last of the leaves spiral down. The light was golden, and the city was hushed in that early evening way, where the world feels like it's holding its breath. He turned to me and said, "I used to think that real connection was something that had to be chased, that it was this big cinematic thing you either stumbled into or missed completely. But this," he gestured gently between us, "this feels like something found." I smiled, my hands tucked into my coat pockets. Sometimes the best things are the ones that grow slowly, quietly, like old trees. You don't notice the roots at first, but one day you realize they're holding everything steady. He looked at me for a long moment, and there was something in his expression. Gratitude, I think. Maybe relief. Like he'd been holding his breath for years, and only now realized he could let it go. "I think I was lonely for a long time," he said, "but I was good at hiding it, especially from myself." That hit me deeper than I expected, because I knew exactly what he meant. "I wasn't just lonely," I said, my voice quieter. "I was invisible. Not in a dramatic way, just fading a little more each year, until you said what you did that morning." We sat in silence after that. The breeze tugged at the trees, and somewhere in the distance, a saxophone played a few wandering notes from a street performer we couldn't see. Robert reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. "I wrote something," he said. "Didn't plan to show you, but maybe now's the right time." I took it from him, unfolded it carefully. It was a short poem, just a few lines. It spoke of stillness, of time passing, of how one voice in a quiet room can change everything. It wasn't polished. It wasn't trying to impress. But it was honest, and that made it beautiful. I folded it back and held it in my lap. "Thank you," I said, my voice catching just a little, "for letting me see this part of you." He nodded, not needing to say anything else. We didn't fall into some whirlwind story after that. We didn't start planning trips or introducing each other to family. What we did was keep showing up, keep talking, keep learning how to be present with each other. Over the next few months, we became something neither of us had a name for. Companions, maybe. Witnesses to each other's quiet moments. And that was more than enough. I look back on that morning often, the one where he called my name in that quiet hallway, where dust danced in the slanted light, and something shifted with a few simple words. It stayed with me, not because it was loud or grand, but because it reminded me that even in the middle of life, when you think the pages are already written, something unexpected and meaningful can begin. If you've ever experienced a connection that arrived softly but changed you deeply, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if this story touched something in you, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs a gentle reminder that life still holds surprises, and subscribe for more stories just like this. Thank you for joining me on this memory. It's one I carry with quiet gratitude, and maybe now you'll carry it too.